think Max is a little late.
That is all right.
Hey guys.
Hey, Max. Question. The Zoom thing we had like, I don't know, a day or two ago, where can I access that video?
From a day or two ago, I don't think I've posted them to YouTube yet. So
it was a Calendly one-on-one. Are those posted on YouTube?
Did I record it?
Yes, you
Okay.
recorded it like in the middle of class though.
Um,
I mean the one-on-one in the middle of the video.
yeah, I will get that posted to you. I just have to upload it.
Okay, heard.
Any other questions I can answer for you guys? Karen, how are you making out? Looks like you're having some victories.
I am having some victories. I just have to remember that I have to hit Command Save in order to see exactly what I did. And I'm turning the reds into greens. And I am I'm such a nerd. I'm so overjoyed. I want to cry. Oh my gosh. So it's I'm coming along. So I'm
Good.
there. I'm delighted. I'm delighted.
Good. There is actually a setting called autosave that
Yes.
we turned on at some point that makes the Command S a little less important. But I think as you keep going, you'll hit the video where we do that.
Yes. Okay.
Cool.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Yeah, so it's a question about today's homework.
Okay.
So can I just consider this as like a first draft? Like it's not like a final or like something, right? It's
Correct.
just going to give us some outline and then you're gonna give us some feedback about, right? Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
just wanted to know.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, wireframes are not they're not anything that like we have to completely lock into. And as you start going and start coding things out, you're going to be like, oh, I put a link in here and didn't have a wireframe screen for that. Or, you're going to be thinking about it and be like, oh, well, what happens when they hit this button? They need some message that says that it's done or that it worked or something like that. So there are definitely screens that pop up well after you wireframe. So this is just a starting point.
Okay, sure.
I also have a question regarding the wireframe. You mentioned the screen popping up. Is that supposed to like, I'm gonna use Figma. Is that supposed to like show through a flow chart or? Because I don't really know what you mean by that.
So like oftentimes you'll have like, say there's a contact form, right? And the contact form has, name, email, message, whatever. And then you click the send message button. What's the user supposed to see? So oftentimes in Figma, you'll create a new kind of rectangle and then design out what the user would see, even if it just says something like, thanks, your message has been sent, we'll be in touch soon. So basically, whenever you have a new page, a new screen, a new section, something that you're linking to, that should all be captured in your wireframe.
Okay. I'll play around with Figma then. Because I remember like when we're doing the car stuff, I remember Jordan had his like flowing to different pages, and that was pretty cool. It was like,
You can use their prototyping tools in order to make like the links actually work, so that when you click on it, it actually takes you to like another section or another rectangle, or I think they call it a frame. But that's not a requirement of this assignment. I mean, if it helps you kind of understand what the flow would be, then you are more than welcome to use those tools and actually like start linking things together on the prototype. But I find it's more helpful to kind of dive right into your code than be doing all of that linking.
And how detailed do you want it to be? Do you want it on just a wireframe level, or do you want it on a mock-up level? Like, do you want to see colors and stuff, or?
Just the wireframe level is the bare minimum. It's again, it goes back to, if it's something that will help you, then it's something that you should do. So if you're gonna take those wireframes, and then the next capstone homework requirement is week 10, right? And that is, hey, you got to build out some of this HTML. You've got to start getting into your code here. And if you're going to take those wireframes and struggle to start getting going on the code because you still can't fully visualize it, then you should do the mock-up step. But if you're someone who's like, no, I understand that while my wireframe doesn't really look like a Bootstrap card, a card is what I want to use here, so I'll just dive right into that HTML. If that's the case, then just dive right in. You don't need to do that mock-up step. So it really depends on your development process. And if you're looking at the wireframes and you're still hesitating to really understand what that's going to look like, then go ahead and do a mock-up.
All right, I understand. Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions I can answer for you guys?
I'm pretty much set, honestly. Have a good one, guys. Goodbye, Max.
Stick around for a couple minutes just in case anything pops up.
Yeah, I think so I was thinking about doing the emergency one. So right now, so I have to think through the pages and stuff. So yeah, and also I think I still need to practice whatever assignment we did over last few weeks, like from second week to fifth week. I want to practice those things.
Yes.
And see how it goes, so like I just don't want to, I want to do it on my own and see whether I can, before we jump into JavaScript. That's my plan. We'll see how it goes. So
that's very fair. There's the JavaScript is kind of weird because it gets started slow in that, like, it's completely different. It won't use HTML or CSS at all. And it's different syntax, then all of a sudden, like, the HTML and CSS kind of creep back into it. So that's a really good thing to do at the end of the module to review. And this week with Nathan should be a little bit easier. So you'll have some more time to focus on like reviewing and catching up and all of that kind of stuff. So it sounds like you've got a good game plan rolling forward.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Xona.
Hi, Max. How are you?
Doing good. You have any questions or just popping in to listen in? I have not had a chance to review your code yet. I can pull that up right now if you want.
Sure. And then I can also show you what it looks like if you want to. Like, I know that I messed up somewhere. But I kind of wanted to get your input. I submitted it either way because I didn't want it to be, last minute thing. But I know I messed up. I just don't know how to like fix it. Give me 1 second, minimize. Okay. So this is what it looks like for
Okay.
my project. It looks different now, and I don't know why it looks different. Maybe because I think it looks different because it's bigger on my on the external monitor, but this is what mine looks like. The issue that I had was the words here, instead of like the sentence continuing, I made two H6
Okay.
syntax, and then I just did 2 sentences.
Yep.
But I didn't know how to like keep the words within this section. So I didn't know if I was supposed to use like cards.
Normally you could do something like a max width on them. Normally you wouldn't break it up into 2 sections because you would want the browser to kind of wrap that text onto the next line for you automatically. The easiest way to do that would be with like a col 10. So you would
Okay.
say like, hey, the text can only go over to like 80% of the width of this, right? It can't go over all the way to the 12.
Okay.
And then the other thing I would say is like, just watch your margins, because white space is something that's like really apparent to the eye. So like the gap between here and over here is a little big. So like,
Yeah.
narrowing down that area to try and pull things together, that would help. And then just being consistent here on like, there's no gap right here, but there is a little gap here. So like going back and making sure that like this div and everything inside of it exactly matches this div and this div.
It does, because okay, hold on. I'm gonna stop sharing and then I'm gonna put this. So I went based off of come on. Hold on. So I'm gonna share this screen. So based off of this one here, there is like, this is how I did it. Like, this is how I wanted it to look like. But because this is my external monitor, so this is what I was going based off of.
Are you sharing your screen?
I thought I was.
You are not.
Oh, it says screen 2. Okay, hold on. Now I don't know. Can you stop me from sharing it?
You're not sharing anything. So
Oh, I'm not sharing anything at all. Okay.
no.
Oh, there we go. Can you see this?
Yes.
So this is what I was going based off of.
Okay.
So this is why it looks different here than it did on my regular computer.
Yeah, and this is why, I mean, this is a particularly like ambitious recreation, right? Because like making this responsive, YouTube kind of does some things when this gets responsive to be like, oh, instead of showing 4 cards across, we're only going to show like 2 of the videos, right? Or we make the videos like horizontally scrollable, but this like you still have a little spacing issues over in your nav bar. But from like your videos, like obviously this is a much better layout because the spacing is more consistent. So this is something that if I were to rebuild this YouTube homepage, like this would take me me a full-time week in order to reproduce it to the point where I would be happy to like share it out. So for like this assignment, this is a perfect, like, you're good to go. I wouldn't invest any more time into it. Just because like I think you've proven to yourself, like, I get the concepts, I get following through a div, I understand spacing and like, you know, the CSS properties it takes to make the little gray background show up with the rounded corners, or like you're really pushing yourself here on a lot of different HTML concepts. So like other than the nav bar, I would say that this is like a perfect recreation for this project.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, and the reason why I had why there's so much spacing here is because this in itself, for every single one of them, I use an icon, but this is a picture. So I couldn't match the picture next to the word. I really didn't know how to, so that's why there's a lot more space right here. And obviously there's a little bit of space here, but it's not as significant as this. So that's my, excuse me. That was my issue with this one.
I went in, I actually did something with Brian. Sorry, my glasses are filthy and I'm like, why can I not see anything? It's because they're gotta be cleaned. So sometimes what you run into with those images is the CSS on the image or the positioning of the image isn't the problem itself. What the real problem is that there's like invisible, transparent white space around the image, right? And so the right answer to that is often not to like fix it in CSS. It's actually to like open the image and crop it. So there's no like area around it, but you're definitely getting into me. I don't know if you know the term nitpicking, but you're getting to the point where it's like, well, I can nitpick here if you wanted to spend more time on the project. Like, hey, you know, there's probably a little bit more margin or padding between this line and this line, and you should like cut down on that. But again, it's like, are you really going to get any more benefit out of this project if you go through and like keep continuing to tweak on it? If you were if a client came to you and was like, hey, this is good, but I want you to fix, you know, the padding there, or I really want you know, at that point, yes, you should probably spend more time on it. But for the purposes of this assignment, I think it's a good confidence booster to be like, wow, look at everything I accomplished on it. And so knowing that software is never done, that you can always make an improvement on it, you do have to catch yourself at a certain point and be like, no, I accomplished what I needed to accomplish for this project. And I think you've crossed that threshold quite easily.
Well, thank you. I just want to make sure that I'm prepared for the next segment of this course, and I just want to be able to confidently know this and understand it and be able to do it, and that's why I'm quote unquote nitpicking on stuff, because I want to be able to be like, okay, yeah, nope, this is how I fixed it last time, this is how I did it, and this is how it's done. So, but thank you, I appreciate the positive feedback.
Yeah, this looks terrific.
Thank you. And I will let you know offhand right now that I am going to probably need more time with my wireframe. I do have I will try to get it done by the end of tonight, but I'm probably going to need more time.
It's not a problem. And if you want to like submit what you have and also submit like, hey, these are the 8 screens that I've planned out, and I only got a chance to wireframe these 3. That's also totally fine. This is more of we've learned that if we start the capstone too early, people panic and they're like, I don't know any software development. How can I be expected to make an app? But we've also learned that if we leave it go too late, a lot of students will get like 3/4 of the way through the program and then be like, oh, I've got to make this whole thing that was meant to take me 6 months, and now I've got to do it in 2. So the homework check-ins and Schneider just asked that as well of like, hey, does this have to be like the final version, right? And it's like, no, you can continue working on it, and like just because you forgot something in your wireframes, or maybe there's Clyde that asked that. But like this doesn't need to be your final version, right? You can go back and continue adding on them or doing a mock-up afterwards, or it's not like we're like, you know, engraving your wireframe in stone and being like, this is the app that you must now make. There are, in professional development, there will always be more screens that pop up and stuff like that. So don't feel pressured that like this has to be the perfect version.
I know, but okay, all right.
This is more saying,
Get
hey,
started.
are you thinking, this is get started. This is a chance for us to give you feedback and say, hey, there may have been a major wireframe screen that you forgot about that you want to think through, or hey, you didn't include a nav bar. How are you going to get between all of these different pages? Or hey, you only did one page here and there's a lot more content that needs to be thought through, right? Like that's the point of having this assignment turn in, is less about, hey, I want to get the grade on this, and more about like us having a chance to provide you feedback and making sure that, you know, you're underway in that process.
Right. But I also want to make sure that I have the right planning, or the right amount of pages or whatever, just so that, I guess, never mind. Feedback would be great, but I wanted to do it like fully do it without, not necessarily not having feedback, but be like, okay, I'm on the right path of doing it.
Yeah.
But that comes with feedback too. So I got to stop being hard on myself. That's all that is.
You very much do. This is the other thing that's really hard about the boot camp is that like in a traditional learning environment, you're so used to like, I've got to get 100%. And that's why we have the rubric the way we do, of like a 2 is a completely passing, like you're doing everything fine grade, right? Like we only give out those 3s when it's like, it's clear that you're investing. Like we can see that in your output. We can see that in the assignment. Like it's really meant to be an extra credit. But part of a boot camp is that like, yeah, we say we go super fast over and over and over again. But that does come at a penalty of like, there just isn't enough time to let some of these concepts sink in, right? Like even with that shorts, with getting that image position, right? That's something where it's like, oh, we could have easily spent half a class on doing image positioning and focusing in on flex more and like doing a deeper dive there, but there just isn't enough time, right? And so that's the other part of this, is that like, this is not going to be something that you can say like, all right, I've now mastered this, right? You're not coming out of 6 months as a senior full stack developer. You're going to have what you need to get started at a job, but all of those entry-level jobs are going to recognize that you still have a lot more growth to go after the boot camp. And that's another tough thing, because in a lot of jobs or a lot of education programs, you think when you get to the end of it that you're fully qualified to do the job. And while that is true for an entry-level job, part of the entry-level jobs are knowing that you still need mentorship, that you've still got, you know, you still need to get the experience. This is, yes, you can land a job after the boot camp, but it's going to take a while for all of the things that you're exposed to fully sink in. And there will be other things that won't sink in. There will be, you may get a front-end development job at the end of the boot camp and be like, oh, all of that Bootstrap stuff or all of that Node stuff, or all the database stuff that I was stressing over because I wasn't getting, turns out I'm not going to use in my job, right? Like there's so many different job titles that you can get after this program that you don't want to beat yourself up too hard over, you know, you not feeling like you fully grasp the concepts. Oftentimes the boot camp mentality is like, if you feel like you have been exposed to it, if you feel like you invested in understanding it, and if you can apply it yourself, don't don't get to that nitpick level where you're like, oh, that image is going to be the death of me, right? Because even
Yeah.
in a job position, you'll be able to go to someone more senior than you and say, hey, I'm having trouble getting this image position right. Can you show me how to do it?
Right. Yeah. No, I understand. I appreciate it because it's, yeah, it's different. This is different. This is a lot different than what I'm used to.
It is, and it's a model I stand by because I know people have gotten jobs, and it's not a model for everyone, right? But I think you're a case of someone who, while it's somewhat uncomfortable to go through the boot camp at this pace, I also think that you're someone who excels and thrives in that kind of environment because you're getting pushed the way you are.
That hit the nail on the coffin because I am 1000% like that. I work very well under pressure. Very, very well.
And some people don't want to learn that way, or some people they look at our curriculum and they go, this is all the content that I want to learn, but I just can't learn it that fast, right? And that happens for I don't know, 10-ish% of our students, where it's like it's just not a good fit. But sometimes there's also initial like getting in their own head, and we talk through that with the student and we're like, get out of your head, just do it. Stop telling yourself you can't do this, right? One thing I said to Karen is coding is a skill, not a talent.
Yeah.
And what that means is people have this in their head that, oh, you've got to be really smart to be a developer, and being smart is a talent. And it's like, no, coding is not a talent-based thing. You can't learn a talent. You can learn a skill. And that's why coding is a skill, is because if you invest the time into it, you can learn it.
Yeah.
And some people are talented learners, but that does not mean that they are going to be a talented developer. It just means they are going to learn that skill quicker.
Very true. I just wish that I had a meeting with Mel, and obviously you know that I work with him in the city, and he said the same thing to me. He said, the coding is all practice. The more that you practice, the more that you do, the more that you will be able to learn and get better at it. But it's never ending. Like, it's a never ending learning thing. So you just got to be willing to always learn and always want to know the different things. So that's definitely, so it resonates with what he said. So I believe you both. That's all I'm saying. But okay, so I will work on my wireframe. I'll do as much as I can. I'll probably for now be on paper until I have time, because I just need to manage my time better. That's what I need to do. So thank you. I appreciate your
It's time management is certainly important, and is another skill, not a talent, right? It's another thing that you can get better at, time management. There is also the flip side of that double-edged sword of, like, sometimes there just are not enough hours in the day. And so time management becomes less about fitting it all in and more about prioritizing what is more important to fit it.
Yeah, very true.
It's like, I'm not saying the Netflix project was a waste of time, because I think that was like a huge breakthrough. Like, I think that was a great project, but that may be one where you go, hey, if I finish a third of this nav bar, do I know enough to move on from this project, right? Of like, do I really have to fully complete this? Or is that just me, like, wanting to get the satisfaction out of the completion without continuing to learn from it? And I think in that project, you did continue to learn throughout the whole thing. So I don't think that was wasted time, but that is another thing to think about, of like, what's going to help me the most here to make sure that these concepts are sinking in. And that's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. I will go and work on this. I have all the questions that for my meeting that you asked me. I literally wrote them all down.
Awesome.
So I will make the wireframes based off of those. So thank you.
Beautiful. Good luck. And don't be afraid to like make it your own, right? Like your capstone is your project. And just because I ask those questions doesn't mean that you necessarily want to put the answer to them in your wireframe, right? Like you may get to the point where you're like, no, I know Max said this feature, but I don't really want this like in my app. Like that's not what I'm going for. That's totally fine, right? Like I'm not going to be going through your wireframes and like taking off points because I said something in the conversation that you didn't put in there, right? Like your capstone is very personal. So just think through what you want in there, and that's what should be in your wireframes.
I will, but the questions that you presented were valid questions as to like, for example, one of them was, I really did write this down. What is the first thing that your user sees? And that's pretty much the start of
Any wireframe. Yeah.
any wireframe or any website or anything like that. So that's what I mean. Like you gave me kind of like a blueprint, and then I can take away or put whatever else I want on it. So
yeah, that is my biggest tip for wireframings is what's the first thing the user sees? Because so many times you get in Figma, you get in front of your whiteboard or whatever, and you're like, I have so many ideas for this app. How do I even get started? And so that's why what's the first thing your user sees is the most important one, because that gives you the breakthrough of like, oh, the ball is starting to roll down the hill in terms of like thinking through all of that. And oftentimes you'll get halfway through that page and start working on another page and get done the other page and then go back to your home page and realize how much you forgot on that page. So, you know, wireframing, much like the capstone, is also there's no right answer. There is just hey, this wireframe is doing everything that I want my user to be able to do. And that's really the goal that you're shooting for.
right. So I'm gonna make that list of all the things that the users should be able to do on my capstone or on my website. So
Yep.
thank you, Max. You guys have a good night. I'm gonna continue to work on this.
Sounds good. Kalai, go ahead.
After Exona talked about it, I got a question about like, okay, so from my side, it's going to be two user side. Like if the hospital is going to use it, so they're gonna see something different, and the actual patient is going to see something different. So is that going to be two different wireframe? Okay.
Yes. You can do it kind of in the same document, or you can do them as two completely separate documents, or, you know, whatever you're using is fine. My only advice there is definitely label it. So it doesn't have to be inside the wireframe, but just put a note somewhere that like, hey, this is a hospital screen. This is another hospital screen. This is a patient screen. Try and separate them out, because that is very common for apps, right? It's very common for different users to have different screens. When I'm on the NewYorkTimes.com, I'm not able to post a new article, but if I'm a writer at the NewYorkTimes.com, I see a completely different screen when I log in to be able to manage the article and all of that kind of stuff, right? So that's very common. But in your wireframes, what you may find is that you want to do one screen on the hospital side, and then before you do another hospital screen, you go over and you think about how that impacts the patient screen. And then once you get that done, you go back to the hospital side and kind of think through that. Some people like to do all the hospital screens all at once and then all the patient screens all at once. It's really personal preference there, but just make sure that you're labeling them, because when you go in and start building it, it's going to be easy to blur that line and forget which is which. And so I would just make sure that you've got them separated and labeled properly. But that is a very common thing to do in app design.
Sure. Thank you.
Jennifer, welcome. You have any questions?
How are you?
Doing good.
Excellent. I might be bombarded by a dog in a minute. A coworker came to work with a dog. So, yep, here it is. Hi, Mocha. Oh, she's so beautiful. Thanks. Oh, she's beautiful. So I'd love to share what I did for my homework. It'd just be great to get some feedback on that and see if I was going in the right direction. How is everybody? Oh, you're muted, Max.
I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, okay. Sorry, so sorry. Where did I go? There we go. I'll pull up my outline and my wireframe, which I ended up actually doing not a wireframe, but I realized it was a mock-up.
Mhm. And that happens sometimes, is that you start realizing, and again, everyone's different here. I prefer to wireframe and go right to my code. Our designer at work prefers to do mock-ups and go right to code and not do the wireframe, because it's easier for them to just design it all than it is to figure out the layout of the content before implementing the design. So, you know, traditionally there are differences between your mock-up, your wireframe, and a prototype, but every company is different in how they go about implementing those.
Okay, well, I had so much fun doing the mock-up. I got into it and spent so much time and then went, oh shoot, I have to do the outline. I was like having such a good time. So let's see here.
Yeah, the only requirement is having something visual done, right? A wireframe, a mock-up. The outline is helpful to make sure that you didn't forget anything in your wireframe or your mock-up. And you're welcome to submit it, and we can definitely give you feedback on it. But I find the outline is more of a helpful step to, one, make sure you didn't forget anything, or two, when you're like staring at that white screen and you don't know where to get started, the outline, I think, is also helpful for that. But that's more of like an optional step, right? It's kind of like when we draw the boxes around everything. It's like, you don't have to do that. No employer is going to like say, well, where did you grid all of this out? That's more of a learning tool than it is a, hey, you've got to turn this in kind of thing.
Right, but I found that incredibly helpful because after I did the mock-up, I was looking at the outline thinking, oh, now how do I do an outline? Because I was so into that mock-up mode.
Yep.
But then I looked at it and thought, okay, now I have to grid this out.
Yep.
And then that was the key. It was great. So, do you see my?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
So I did my notes, and just like you said, doing the outline, I had to go back and fix things in the mock-up and vice versa. So I found that really helpful. I'm gonna make my mock-up. Oh, I did not mean to do that. I'm gonna make this bigger. So then this was my wireframe.
Okay.
Mock-up. So part of me feels like it's too simple of an application, but
No.
as I've gone through it, I realize it doesn't have to be that complicated. This gives me what I want.
Yes. And part of the reason why MVPs exist is not only to say like, hey, this is a boot camp, we don't have time for you know, more features. The reason MVPs are important is, who is the most important person to tell you that they want a feature? Well, as developers, we go, hey, we thought of this great feature, we want to add this. But that's not who is important to add features. The most important person to add features is your user, right? You want your user to be saying, hey, it would be really helpful if you just added this one name field, or, you know, hey, you're very dog focused right now. Did you think about other kinds of pets? Or, you know, whatever the user feedback is. Oftentimes it's things that you wouldn't have ever thought of. So
Mm.
that's why we try and limit it down to the MVP of saying, let's get something out there that people can use. And once they do, that will generate feedback and tell me what direction I should really be heading in terms of what features to work on next.
Yes, and when my wife looked at this yesterday, she was able to say, what about this and what about that? Don't you think you're missing a couple of things? So great, great to have multiple people looking at something.
Yes. Yes. And that's the most empowering part of the wireframe or mockup is it's out of your head now, right? This isn't just something that you're talking to your wife and you go, this is the idea. And then this screen is going to go to this screen. And then, right, this is what's going to show up. Now you can actually put it in front of them and actually solicit feedback, which is another major reason why we wireframe, and an industry practice of, hey, when we do a design at work, we build into the schedule time for feedback before we move on to the next phase, because the mockup only does us so much good if we send the mockup and then start deving it all out and end up coming back to the getting feedback going, oh no, X, Y, and Z needs to change. Well, now we already started coding it out and those changes are going to be harder to make. So that is definitely a part of the process of getting and soliciting feedback.
Much harder. So the outline really dictated how some of this ended up getting changed so that I had clearer rows and columns to work with.
Yes.
This was all over the place.
Yep.
And I thought, there's no way I can do that. You know, it's not entirely as lined up or as aligned as I want it to be.
Yep.
I have to play around with font size, but you know, that allowed me to at least get it down. Do you see anything so far that you would give me suggestions on?
No, this is all looking good. So the only thing that I don't see here is some kind of admin interface.
Oh.
So do you want the ability when someone uploads their dog for adoption, do you want to have a feature to review that before it goes live on the site? And
Yeah.
the answer to that may be yes, but not for MVP, right? Which is a totally fine answer. Or you may say, oh, I didn't think about that. That is a really important feature for me. I need to add, you know, more screens for that.
See, I hadn't thought of that. And that's interesting because I've gone about this and all of our classes so far with the user in mind, but not me. Like,
And
not
that was my feedback for Kalai, right? Kalai just asked, she's building a screen. I don't know that
patient. Yeah.
Yeah. Same for you. Hey, you've got the user here. The other thing I would push you on is once this listing goes up, how do I take it down? My dog got adopted. I need some way to say, hey, my dog got adopted here, but I should be the only one who is able to take down my dog that I posted. I shouldn't be able to take down other dogs as an end user.
I get it.
So you need to,
like on paper.
You also need to think through a login screen of, hey, before you can post a dog, you've got to create an account. Because if you're signed into your account, now I can make sure that only you can edit your own posts.
Ooh, okay. Login, admin. Bigger. Okay, I just got to make that note. Thank you. And this was CRUD. This was part of the CRUD thing you talked about, create.
Correct. Create, read, update, delete.
files.
So you've already got some of your CRUD going on. Your create is done because you've got that form thought through, right? Of the name, breed, age, description, that kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
You've got your R done because your R is going to happen on the homepage, right? Where you're gonna, or on the your available animals page, because that's reading all of the information from the database. What I'm pushing you on is, okay, as a user, I want to be able to go back and edit my post and say like, oh, I forgot to include this, or someone keeps on messaging me for these details. And I want to include it on the page, or you need to, and oftentimes, this is another thing to think through. Do you want them to delete the page where it would actually remove all that information from the database? Or do you want them to be able to update the page and say, successful adoption, this pet is no longer available? Because you probably don't want to really delete it from the database. You just want to mark it, right? So the reasoning that's important is if you think about like Facebook Marketplace, you're going to go back on there in a week and be like, okay, I decided I actually do want to buy this. And if I click the link that I saved in my bookmarks, I don't want it to say item deleted. I want it to still be able to see the item and have the item say, sorry, this item sold. So same concept here of, hey, maybe we don't actually want them to delete the listing, or maybe we give them both options. We say, hey, if you found a way to make it work and you can keep this pet, you can delete it completely from our site, or you can also come in here and mark this pet as successful new home found or something like that.
Ooh, okay, so I need a few more pages at least to make this better. Okay. Thank you so much. I had log in, right. Okay. That at all. So I get all of that. Thank you.
Cool.
All right. I'm still at work, so I have to go back to work for a little bit.
No problem.
Thank you so much. Good to see you, Karen. Good to see you, Max. Bye.
No problem. See ya.
You too. Have a good night.
Thanks. We'll just see if I can actually like make myself go away.
Unfortunately, that's one thing. Like, here, let me stop your screen share. Oh, you got it. There you go. Some people are like, can you just like remove me from the meeting? And I'm like, well, I can, but then you'll never be able to get back in.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Okay. Now bye.
So, yeah. Any questions I can answer for you, Karen, before I keep going?
No, I'm just kind of plugging along.
Okay, where are you at?
Oh boy, where am I at? I am, let me go ahead and share.
Yeah.
Let me share my screen. Share screen.
One thing I wanted to mention is oftentimes when we get behind, we
Yes.
think like the only way to catch up is to just like keep watching the videos and I'll get it, right? And that is not the Careers in Code model. Like
Yeah.
coding, you don't code alone, right? There are very few developers that work alone. Most developers work in a team for
Yes.
good reason, right? So like that's what you should be using your one-on-ones for, of like, don't let yourself get stuck. Don't let yourself, when you have momentum and all of a sudden you lose it, like that's what we can use those one-on-ones for.
Yes.
Okay, so you're making good progress here. You've got your first calls going. You've got your all of your content for the first row in place. You've got your structure set up for the next row. All of this is looking good. Just be careful on that line 7. You have 48 picks 1 instead of 48 picks with a semicolon.
Semicolon. Yes, and it's those little mistakes that mistakes, I'm not really quite sure, but like, end tag, that kind of thing. So I'm bumping into a lot of reds and just kind of taking a look at what could be possibly going on around that area to fix that problem. So
Yep. All right. Do you feel like you're making forward progress, or do you
Yes.
feel okay? Okay.
Yes, no, I am. I don't have to have that long, that hard discussion. Like, I don't think this is for me. This is, oh my gosh, what did I do? I wasted everybody's time. So I do feel like, I'm getting things more, I'm getting tags, and I'm really understanding the concept. But, you're right. I mean, having to kind of put aside the innate talent and learning the actual skill. And it's different, when you're using such a highly technological, using a language.
The other thing I would say is stop trying to get your brain to think like a computer.
Stop. Okay, try it.
Computers and humans do not think the same. And while oftentimes we emulate what the computer is doing in order to find our bugs and issues,
Yes.
that is very different than saying, well, Max thinks like a computer, so I need to think like a computer. It may appear that way. I don't think like the computer. I think like a human trying to translate into what the computer needs to do. And that goes two ways, because sometimes the computer is trying to tell us something else, and we need to figure out what they're telling us and convert that back into something we understand. But at no point will you get to this level of mastery where you will think like a computer. That's not humanly, physically possible.
Right. Okay.
So think about it more of, how can I translate what I want it to do into something the computer can understand?
Translate to what computer understands. Okay. I would probably say my kryptonite is asking for help. That's probably one of my biggest, kryptonites, and just thinking that, okay, I just have to just kind of focus, or there's some sort of self lack that I just am not getting. So asking for help is definitely, it's always been the hardest for me. So
It's something, one of the biggest thing people ask me all the time, what are you looking for in a junior developer? Right?
yeah,
When you interview someone, what are you looking for? A bad employer will tell you, oh, I'm looking for 3 to 5 years of JavaScript, and I'm looking for someone who knows this specific tool, and I'm looking for, right? Like, that is part of the job description. Sure, that is, but what you really want to be hearing from an employer is, I'm looking for someone who knows how to use Google. I am looking for someone who knows when to keep their heads down and keep working on an item, and when they are digging themselves deeper in a hole and need to know when to ask for help.
got it. Ask for help.
So that asking for help is certainly a weakness that you've identified, but it's something that you need to work on, because you won't make it as a developer unless you ask for help.
Yes.
And that's not just for the boot camp. That goes for all development and a career in software development.
Yes, certainly takes a lot of courage.
Yes, a lot of courage and a lot of understanding that what you're learning is hard.
Yes.
And when you get a job in this, that learning does not stop. And it slows down when you get up to a senior level. The learning does not ever completely stop, though.
Yes, understood.
All right, well, I will let you get back to it.
Thank you so much.
No problem. I'll see you. Have an awesome rest of your weekend.
Yes, you too. Thank you.